the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance in South Africa, expected the president to use this week's State of the Nation address to elaborate on concrete steps that government would take to address the country's alcohol-related harm. Joining us is a director, Mr. Maurice Smithers. A very good evening to you, sir. Now, you have said that you had hoped, or you would have hoped, that government would have made alcohol abuse one of the key priorities in his speech. Tell us more about this and why.
Sure, thanks, Tommy. Look, I think there were two main reasons why we thought it would happen. One is that when the president presented the ANC's January the 8th statement, he mentioned very clearly that alcohol measures needed to be taken to reduce alcohol-related harm in the country. And he referred to the fact that we'd learned so much about the challenges around alcohol under COVID. The second reason was that a couple of weeks later, he had an interview with the Sunday Times. And in that interview, he, for the first time, actually specifically spelled out some of the steps that he believed could be taken to deal with alcohol-related harm in the country. And those were to increase the drinking age, to increase excise tax, to limit operating hours of liquor outlets, and also to do something about advertising, either banning or severely limiting advertising. So we thought, well, you know, given the fact that the ANC's speech in particular is almost like the marching orders to government as to what the ANC as the governing party think should be the priorities for the country, we expected that the issue might be raised in the SONA.
Mr. Smithers, the president did touch on related issues, though. He spoke about gender-based violence. He also spoke about Africa's response to the pandemic. In context
Correct.
of how that relates to your particular industry, does that cover the sphere of alcohol abuse? Is it not somehow related?
Well, it is, but it's very obliquely related. And we noted that in our press release. Obviously, we know that he has made the link since November 2018, when he hosted the summit on gender-based violence and femicide. He has made the link between alcohol and gender-based violence. Secondly, obviously, as I mentioned, alcohol has been something that has predominated all of our minds actually over the COVID period. But we believe that it's necessary to actually be much more explicit about it, because I think that a lot of people in the country are very concerned about the alcohol situation and want to know what government is intending to do about it going forward. And we haven't really heard any concrete plans by government to deal with this, especially given the fact that we do have a liquor policy, a new liquor policy, which was adopted in 2016, and we have a pending liquor amendment bill. But nothing's been said about that bill since 2017. We have heard recently that the DTIC is working on the bill and that it may well be processed before the end of the next financial year. But we think that the country would like to know that. People who have been particularly affected by the alcohol situation would like to know that. And that's why we would have liked to have heard something concrete said about it. But it didn't happen. And so we will continue to raise the issue and continue to push for attention to be given to it. And as we said in our press statement, you know, there are two particular areas that we want to focus on now. One is that the president did talk about economic recovery and economic reform. And we really think that it's time that government looked very seriously at how to assist subsistence alcohol traders. We're talking about the shebeen owners, the small tavern owners who are selling alcohol from their homes and really just making enough to put food on the table and educate their kids. It's really quite untenable that so far into democracy, that is still one of the few options available to people, particularly in the Black areas. And we believe that much more should be done to allow people to exercise their full and equal constitutional right to participate in all forms of economic activity, something that people were denied in the apartheid period. So, you know, much more work needs to be done on that. We also, as I said, think that the liquor bill must go through. But also we're going to be pushing the Minister of Finance to look at increasing excise tax on alcohol, because, you know, excise tax is supposed to be used to discourage the excessive use of dangerous substances such as alcohol and tobacco. But the reality is the increase in excise tax over the last 40 years has been so low that the real price of beer today is actually lower than the real price of beer in 1960. So, you know, if alcohol is too affordable, it just means it encourages people to drink too much. And that's something that's got to be dealt with.
Now, Mr. Smithers, you spoke about economic reform that would empower, you know, smaller subsistence producers of alcohol. What do you believe have been the barriers to enforcing this transformation?
Look, apartheid had a very, very profound impact on the Black community through various legislation such as the Group Areas Act, the Job Reservation Act, Bantu Education, the extension of Universities Act, which separated and limited the amount of educational training and educational advancement of the Black community. And this culture, which basically said that Black people were there to work for white people. Not enough has been done to shift people in the Black community to being able to take full advantage of their constitutional right to now be actively involved in the economic activities of the country in full, as they were denied before. And so that's why people end up, and you know, we have massive unemployment at the moment. We don't have economic growth. And so we have a situation where people fall back on selling alcohol as a last desperate measure just to be able to make a living. And I remember a couple of years back, I did a master's in planning, and I interviewed a couple of people from liquor traders associations, liquor trader organizations representing small alcohol outlets. And they said to me that the bulk of people who sell alcohol, that's not their first choice. He says that actually the one guy said that nobody wants to die selling alcohol. And by that he meant that most people at that level who are selling alcohol would like to sell enough alcohol to not be able to sell alcohol. They would rather do something else. I mean, if you think about what a shebeen is, or even some taverns, it's where people are selling alcohol from their homes. Now, how many people willingly and voluntarily give up half of their home to selling alcohol to a bunch of strangers who actually can cause chaos actually in that space? It's really, something needs to be done to address that. And in doing that, by the way, one of the benefits would be that we would achieve another goal of the World Health Organization global strategy for reducing alcohol harm and our own liquor policy, which is reducing the number of liquor outlets in the country. And if you just talk to anybody who lives in communities around in the country, it's quite clear that people in communities are very concerned about the overabundance of liquor outlets in their neighborhoods and the fact that there's very little they can do about the harm that is caused by those outlets.
Mr.
So we're talking also about creating a situation that empowers ordinary community members to have a safe and secure and peaceful living existence.
Let me get some clarity, Mr. Smithers, on your position as the association. On one hand, you have been advocating for smaller subsistence distributors to be empowered, that they're able to make a living and create some sort of a business for themselves. On the other hand, you're also talking about the harms that alcohol abuse actually causes in societies, also in the same vein as the World Health Organization objectives. How do you marry the two? How do you support small businesses in the alcohol industry while at the same time trying to reduce the number of people who are actually consuming alcohol?
No, I think there's a misunderstanding. We don't represent the small liquor traders at all. We are a civil society organization representing community ordinary community members, not traders. Obviously, some traders are community members, but we are trying to be a voice for ordinary community members in the country who are ultimately, at the end of the day, the ones who suffer the consequences of alcohol-related harm. They are the ones who have to put up with all the disruption that is caused by alcohol, the threat to women and children as a result of alcohol, and many, many people who are in that situation find that they have no power to do anything about it.
Let me clarify this,
example,
Mr. Smithers. Let me clarify this
yeah,
before you go ahead. I was asking this question in relation to your saying that there needs to be economic reform. That is something that you are
correct,
advocating for.
correct.
So it was in the
Yeah, but
context of the economic reform.
the reform we're calling for is a reform in which people, particularly in the Black community, who were disadvantaged under apartheid and who were denied access to the economic space generally, who in fact under apartheid, one of the very few things that they were able to do was to sell alcohol illegally, of course, because because under apartheid, Black people weren't even allowed to drink alcohol, let alone to sell it. But nevertheless, that is one of the ways in which people did make a living. That's how the whole shebeen culture was created. But the reality is, people should not be forced into selling alcohol as a last resort in a post-apartheid South Africa. They should have been through the Department of Small Business Development, the Department of Trade and Industry. There should have been massive programs to upgrade people's skills, people's understanding, people's business skills, people's entrepreneurial skills, to enable them to be engaged in a far broader range of economic activities that are socially beneficial activities, that are beneficial in their neighborhoods, and not actually end up selling alcohol just to survive. That's the issue that we are raising.
All right,
Because
and we'll leave it at that,
day,
unfortunately, for this evening. Mr. Smithers' time, unfortunately, not on our side. But thank you very much for putting the views as well as the hopes of the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance in South Africa in place. That's Maurice Smithers there.